What's up, folks? It's happening. The dollar, the petrodollar is on its way out. Start collecting anything you want to buy in the Mad Max hellscape that's on its way. Collect it now. You know, if you have like snacks you really enjoy, like Pop Tarts, those are going to be gone. So you're going to want to get boxes and boxes of those. Oh man, soon $1,000 will buy you like a Tootsie Pop or some shit. It's it's headed in that direction. No, I don't want to be. I'm not going to be one of those people that acts like this shit happens overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow collapsing of an empire that has done all that it can to destroy the world. Is a slow, painful process. It's like a 20 or 30-year colonoscopy. That's what we're going through, and this is part of it. But thank you all for being here. Thanks for taking the time to check out my live stream. We'll be going through a bunch of things, but several of these stories have to do with the petrodollar, which, as I mentioned on the latest Most Censored News, actually, I'm going to play that at the end of this live stream, a little over an hour from now, in case you haven't seen it. But as I mentioned in that, petrodollar it's where the U.S. gets its power in many ways, in most ways. That and maybe a touch of sociopathy. You know, you like to have a sprinkle of sociopathism on top of the petrodollar. But it's where we get a lot of our power, but it's also our greatest weakness in that the U.S. has been printing money, trillions of dollars, a lot of it for military, but also sometimes we just throw $4 trillion to Wall Street, you know, just for kicks, just to see how things go. Sometimes we do that. So, and the only reason, and you know, maybe you guys are tired of me saying this, but it's kind of the roots of a lot of what's going on right now in the world. So I'm going to keep repeating it. I'm like Bernie Sanders saying we should have health care. But it's the root of our power. It's also our greatest weakness in that the U.S. can't just print money endlessly unless it continues to be the global reserve currency, and which is tied to the fact that it is the petrodollar, that petroleum, fossil fuels, which unfortunately for the fucking planet are still the source of so much of our energy. It's our greatest weakness in that the moment these countries start stepping out of selling and buying oil in dollars, the whole house of cards starts coming down, and that's what's happening. And I, you know, as I imagine many of you who are in the United States, you're kind of two minds of it. If you're watching this, you'd probably understand that the U.S. empire is a fucking force for evil. You know, endless war, 6 million killed in the wars on terror over the past 20 years, yada, yada. I don't need to go through all of that. And so really what the United States, if it continues to be a country, is, which I believe it will, but what it should be is it should be a country like many other countries, that where they try and help their people. We try and be a country unto ourselves, as opposed to ruling the fucking world. I'm opposed to, I don't know about you, I kind of prefer to be like free and not be ruled. And I feel like most humans prefer that. So we should support that around the world. But so the two sides of it is this will be painful for the United States of America, and it'll be positive for the rest of the world, because you need a check on power. That's how power works. You need a check on power. You need multiple countries, or however you organize the world. You need multiple groups that say, hey, you know what? We actually have the ability to stand up, have our own sovereignty, have our own will for our people. And for a long time, many years, the United States has basically said, yeah, nobody has that except us. We just tell everybody what to do, and you fucking do it. And if you don't, then we will invade you and have you bayoneted in the streets like Gaddafi, maybe hanged and have your head pop off like Saddam Hussein. You know, we'll do one of those things if you go outside of what we want. And that's not the way to organize a world. Not really good. Not good for us. And then there's the kind of a side benefit that no one, even people who talk about the petrodollar, which is a tiny number of individuals, then there's the side issue of we have to get off the idea that the U.S. power, the largest power in the world, is based on fossil fuel sales. because as long as we're there, then climate crisis increases exponentially and we all die and we destroy our futures as well. But, who cares about those kids? I've been telling my kid, I have one of those new ones, one of the new kids. It's a 2021 kid. And I have one of those new ones. And I've been telling him, listen, it's a game over for you. So I'm going to, hopefully we can keep things okay for the next, 10 years. But yeah, you should just live it up because not much time left. Anyway, that being said, let's get into the news. By the way, I threw a comment, it's an expected question to you guys in the comment thread. Let me know what you think about the whether the petrodollar is failing, whether it will have a huge impact on internal United States goings on, or whether I'm overstating it. And it's totally fine if you believe that. You're wrong. You're totally wrong. But anytime you go against anything I say, totally wrong. But feel free to throw that in the comment thread. And so let's get into it. Please click thumbs up, click like, do all those things. And by the way, for those of you who are regular Saturday live stream viewers, I'm sorry Eleanor Goldfield cannot be here. She will be. We're going through a lot of things going on right now in our lives, and so she will be back, soon, roughly a month, I hope. But anyway, she's not gone forever. I don't have her locked in a basement or anything. And you can also check out her podcast that she does regularly, still co-hosts regularly, called Project Censored. Anyway, so let's get into this. Oh, and I'm going to get into a bunch of other topics as well. Does the Trump indictment matter? The TikTok ban bill that is about way more than TikTok. In fact, it doesn't even have the words TikTok in it, which, does that mean they're planning on doing something far greater than just banning TikTok? Anyway, I'm going to get into all those things. So China and Brazil ditch the dollar, strike a deal to settle trade in yuan and real. China overtook the U.S. in 2009 to become Brazil's largest trading partner. Beijing accounts for more than a fifth of all imports in Brasilia. And so I think in order to understand how important this is, how significant this is, you have to also understand that by being the global reserve currency, many countries would do trade between each other in dollars, not in their own currency. And the idea behind that, the reason that was beneficial to many of these countries, one reason was because the U.S. said, if you do anything else, we will make it uncomfortable. Okay, we will make it very uncomfortable for you. And and a bullet through the head is uncomfortable. So they would say that, but that was part of it. But it was also that the dollar is far more stable than a lot of other currencies. Part of the reason for that, or really the main reason for that, is the petrodollar and the global reserve currency. So these countries would do trade between each other in US dollars because they could figure the US dollar's value is not going to change much. However, two things have happened. One, many countries have become more powerful and are now able to step outside of the U.S. Control, outside of the slimy U.S. tentacles, and be able to fight back, be able to have their own sovereignty, be able to make their own decisions about their country. God forbid, right? And the other thing that happened is the U.S. dollar is going down, partially because of some of the U.S. Decisions, such as creating and funding a proxy war in Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a big deal for China and Brazil, two of the largest countries that are both in the BRICS conglomerate of countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. China is allegedly the top rival to U.S. economic hegemony, while Brazil enjoys the biggest economy in Latin America. By the way, you can tell this is not mainstream media because they would never use the phrase U.S. economic hegemony in mainstream media because they, A, don't want you to even know what hegemony is, and B, don't want you to know that the U.S. has it. The U.S. empire, if you watch mainstream media, the U.S. empire doesn't exist. There's no empire to the U.S. It's just, we're just a country. We just we're good neighbors. and we help people do the things they want to do with what? You know, they're like they act like we're what's his name, John Ritter and Three's Company. Just the guy knocks on the door and whatever. And the neighbor was the guy who played Barney and Barney Fife and the Andy Griffith Show. Do I have all those names right? Wow, this is before my time. Anyway, it would just come and knock on the door and be like, "What are you up to?" That's all the U.S. is, right? We're just the "What are you up to" guys. What's going on in there? That's it. We don't coup other countries, which, by the way, Lula, the leader of Brazil, who was involved in this deal, who went to China, actually arrived in China, was supposed to arrive in China the day I left, but was sick and came a day later or something. And for those of you who don't know, I was just in China. I went there for 4 days I was asked to come give a brief speech, and I talked all about it. I spent almost an hour explaining everything about that in one of my live streams, so you can check that out at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Very easy to find. Big thumbnail that said I was in China. Anyway, check that out. But so Lula arrived maybe the day I left or the day after. Anyway, he was cooed by the U. I mean, the U.S. was involved in it. The U.S. fingers were all over, tentacles were all over it. It was a lawfare coup, which is the way the U.S. now more often does coups. Is rarely is the U.S. running in there with Marines and guns. We still do that sometimes, but more often, what the U.S. does is through proxies and through law and basically a corruption of the law, which we ultimately learned in Brazil. Through leaked texts and emails, that it was incredibly corrupt prosecution of Lula, and basically it put him in prison so that he could not run, so that Bolsonaro could win, so that the U.S. could have a fucking fascist in power in Brazil that aligned with U.S. interests. And all of that happened. Then it comes revealed that the courts and prosecutors were corrupt and were working with the opposition government in order to prosecute Lula for nothing. Meaning non-crimes. And they succeeded. But then it came out and Lula was freed. And then Lula ran again and he won. And so the irony of all this is that this deal was done with someone who had been cooed by the U.S., which, sometimes sticks in people's craw. Although I don't even know what that term means. What the fuck is someone's craw? Does anybody know what someone's craw is? Do we all have a craw? Is it just some people have craws? I don't know if I want to know. Actually, you know what? Don't tell me. That sounds. I feel like it's gonna be gross. Anyway, just remember to every time you shower, clean your craw. Just make sure you clean your craw. Okay, so Lula goes over there and they strike a deal to move outside of the petrodollar. Again, this is a big deal. It is barely talked about in mainstream media. That doesn't mean it's not covered. You can find a CNN article on it. However, that's it. You'll find one little article on it. When in fact, this is major. And I'm going to show you that the U.S. also thinks this is major in a minute. The deal follows a preliminary agreement in January, which was announced after a high-level China-Brazil business forum in Beijing. The Brazilian Trade and Investment Promotion Agency, in a statement, said settling cross-border trade in yuan real is expected to reduce costs, promote even greater bilateral trade, and facilitate investment. But I think beyond all of those things reasons they just gave, the biggest thing is that it shows their sovereignty. It shows their power. It shows the waning ability of the U.S. empire to tell everybody how to fucking behave. And that's why this is so significant. And it's also why your mainstream media wants you to focus on everything else. Do not sit and think about these issues. Do not talk about them. I'm not saying there's no New York Times article. There are, but there's like one little one to hide, in order to make it not a major issue amongst the national dialogue. All right, so continuing down this path of the U.S. is waning in our ability to bend every other country to our will and to destroy countries. I mean, that's the thing is, like, you wouldn't have so many countries trying to get outside of this U.S. empire control if If we had treated countries right, if we'd actually dealt with them like good neighbors, like friendly people, like that want to work and help their people. Instead, we have crushed them. So many countries have been crushed by the United States. And when they have democratically elected leaders that don't fit with our ideals, with what the US wants, then we coup them, assassinate them, work to have their revolutions amongst their people to stop them. We never, I mean, how many times do we try to kill Fidel Castro? It's in the hundreds. Go ahead, you can Google it sometimes. It's been admitted by the CIA, or at least revealed. They tried to kill Fidel Castro hundreds of times. That's how much we're willing to let another country be another country on its own. All right, so Saudi Arabia takes steps to join the China-led security bloc as ties with Beijing strengthen. And China, for those of you who don't know, Saudi Arabia is the biggest partner out of everyone in the petrodollar scheme, in the petrodollar scam that we have played, in the system that allows the United States to print trillions of dollars and not have them lose value. Saudi Arabia is number one on that list because they control OPEC, right? They control so much of the world's oil. And we made this deal. This is Kissinger apparently came up with this deal back when Nixon took us off the gold standard. That, well, how do we leave the gold standard but still have the US dollar have power? Oh, well, we back all oil trade in dollars, because Kissinger may be a villainous, parasitic, rotting flesh bag of a shit stain on humanity, but he's also not dumb. I will say that. Does that count as a compliment? I think I just gave him a compliment. I think if you take that sentence as a whole, I just complimented him. And he's not dumb. And he knew that you got to have a way to, if you're going to take it off the gold standard, you got to have a way to have the dollar keep having power. And the way they came up with was, well, all oil trade will be in dollars. And anybody who tries to go out of that, Saddam Hussein, Assad, Gaddafi, anyone who tries to go outside of that will be crushed, destroyed, hanged, and bayoneted in the street like what they did to Rasputin. They'll be shot, stabbed, hanged, fucking drawn and quartered. We'll run over you in our Jeep, and then we'll back it up and do it again. Like, that's what happens to those who go outside of the petrodollar, but no longer, because the U.S. doesn't have that kind of power. So Saudi Arabia, the biggest partner in the petrodollar scheme, has taken a step to join the China-led security bloc as ties with Beijing strengthen. Saudi Arabia's cabinet approved a decision to join a China-led security bloc, strengthening Riyadh's eastern ties in a further step away from U.S. interests. The state-owned Saudi press agency said that in a session presided by King Salman bin Abdulaziz, the Saudi cabinet on Tuesday approved a memorandum awarding Riyadh the status of dialogue partner in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a political security and trade alliance that lists China, Russia, India, Pakistan, and 4 other Central Asian nations as full members. And by the way, you take China, Russia, India, and Pakistan together, and what percentage of the world's population is that? Probably like fucking 60% or something. Anyway, China and India both have 1.4 billion people. So this is a major step. And again, I know I've mentioned that the mainstream media doesn't cover this type of thing much. However, this is an article at CNBC, but this is what they like to do, is they'll cover it a little bit and they'll mainly ignore it. Or they'll cover it in a very surface level way. So they probably had segments on CNBC about how this is a big deal, but they, really want you to focus on other things, on the Trump indictment, but on surface level part, they'll say Saudi Arabia is they have human rights violations. It's like, oh, really? They just started having human rights violations when they did something that the U.S. didn't like? That's interesting how that works. Same's going on with Mexico, right? You have AMLO standing up against the U.S. empire, saying Julian Assange should be freed, saying that, he nationalized the oil industry. He is nationalizing the lithium. He's saying there should be a lithium OPEC in which they decide the price of lithium. All of these things he called the U.S. an oligarchy, which is ruled by an elite business class, which of course we are. I mean, who can even begin to argue we are not an oligarchy? You are utter. If anyone says that to you, then just be like, okay, I can see you don't actually seriously want to talk. So if anyone seriously says to you the U.S. is not an oligarchy, then I think you should respond to them the same way I responded when I was kind of debating politics with someone I didn't know very well. And then he paused and he goes, hold on, but do you think the United States really has nuclear weapons? And I was like, okay, I can see this is a 10-pound debate in a 5-pound bag. This is you're not playing with a full load there. So I may have mixed my metaphors. I don't know if you can play with a full load, full deck. Yeah, maybe. So anyway, have you ever played poker with a full load in your pants? Man, that'll make you eager to finish that game. So you're playing with a full load. You are a hungry player. Anyway, that Saudi Arabia step is another step in this. And next is what I was saying about how the U.S. doesn't really want you, U.S. empire, the U.S. mainstream media, which is corporate media, and we have a corporate government. They don't really want you talking about this stuff. They don't really want you learning these things. They don't really want you saying the term petrodollar, as I will mention in the upcoming Most Censored News that you're going to see at the end of this live stream, if you haven't already seen it. They don't even want you checking Wikipedia for the term petrodollar. If you look on Wikipedia in the English language one, in other languages, I think there is a entry for petrodollar, but in the English language Wikipedia, there's not a page alone for the petrodollar, which, as you'll see, I talk about on Most Censored News, is hilarious because there are pages for fucking everything. Name anything in the world. There is a page on Wikipedia for, I'm not saying it's accurate, but it exists. There's a page for me. It's complete bullshit, but it exists. And there's not a page for petrodollar. They don't want you talking about it. However, as I'm going to show here, in their own threat reports, they admit this shit be serious. So the U.S. just came out with their latest threat report. Washington says it's facing critical years in the great power competition. The U.S., this is just recently, March 8th, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence released the annual Threat Assessment Report, which evaluates worldwide threats to U.S. national security, including cyber and technological threats, terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, crime, environmental, and natural resources issues. The report highlights the challenges Washington faces in the rapidly devolving U.S.-led global order. Yeah, U.S.-led global order. And why is it U.S.-led? Oh, because we want to rule the world. With China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea identified as the most significant security challenges for Western allies in the coming year. And again, this is them admitting that this shit is going down, that the people are stepping outside the petrodollar, that there's security blocks, military security blocks amongst countries that we consider enemies. They're admitting this in this threat report. This threat report largely isn't for public consumption. I don't mean it was leaked. It is released outwardly, but it's not like they do a bunch of, mainstream media press junkets on telling everybody what the greatest threats are. And so they're admitting that this is their largest threat to the U.S. empire. But this is also a, propaganda article in their terminology, talking about how the report highlights the challenges Washington faces. What does that mean? Oh, that means other countries actually having their own sovereignty, actually standing up for themselves and being outside of the fucking stranglehold of the U.S. empire that has cooed and killed so many of their leaders. That's what challenges Washington faces means. U.S.-led global order. That's like saying Hitler had a, Hitler-led German order. It's like, yeah, he was a fucking tyrant who ran Germany and the other countries that he took over. It's not like U.S.-led. Like we just said, hey guys, would you like to lead us? I mean, would you like to follow us? Come on. Come on, guys. Yeah. It's not like we just said to countries like, we're really good at like just leading. We're just like really good at this. So if you want to just come on, I know it's not like they're talking about it like it's the kid on the playground who's like, I know where there's like a stash over in the woods of like comic books and candy and fireworks that someone's hid there. Follow me to the secret stash of comic books, candies, and fireworks. And you're like, okay, I'll totally follow this guy. He is our leader because he knows where the fucking candy is. That's the way they're talking about it. No, this is the U.S. bending countries to their will, sometimes killing and cooing their leaders their democratically elected leaders in order to do that. So it's not U.S.-led global order. It's the U.S. dictating global hegemony is what it is. Unsurprisingly, the report identifies China as the top U.S. threat due to its efforts to undermine U.S. influence worldwide. God forbid the U.S. shouldn't rule the world. Create different and here's the thing: it's not like I personally just think the U.S. shouldn't rule the world, and that's a personal decision. No, the world is cracking under the weight of our greed and unfettered capitalism and unfettered militarism. It is just cracking and crumbling. The environment is collapsing around us. So it's not like a personal opinion like, oh, I think the US shouldn't run things. It's like if we want to see a future, the countries need to work together and have their own sovereignty and their own ability to address their concerns in their country, and communities should, and environmentally, and all the and get outside of just capitalist exploitation of every people and place and environment, the natural world. We've killed 50% of all wildlife over the past 40 years. This is not a personal opinion. This is how it fucking the only way we can survive. So I think people like hear me say like, oh, the US empire needs to come to an end, and they go, oh, well, that's his opinion. It's not. It's like, if we want to survive, it has to come to an end. If you want to see a future, if you want your grandkids to see a bird in the sky, it needs to come to an end. Okay? Do you get it? Identifies China as the top U.S. threat due to its effort to undermine influence worldwide, create differences between Washington and its allies. China created the differences between Washington and the countries that we've turned into vassal states like most of Europe. Washington did that. And annexed Taiwan. Here's some wonderful propaganda for you. Annex Taiwan. Now, for those of you in the watching right now, I'll pose a question to you. How many countries around the world officially recognize Taiwan as its own country? I'll give you a moment to think that over and answer. And, you may be going, okay, most of the countries in the world, half the countries. It's 13, maybe it's 12 now. Countries out of 200 or whatever, around 200. 12 say that Taiwan is its own country. So how is it China can annex a country that's not a country? But, this is the propaganda that U.S. is putting forward. The recent success of China in facilitating, by the way, Washington also says Taiwan is part of China. It's still our official policy, is that Taiwan is part of Washington, is part of China. So despite the fact that they're writing shit like that, it's still our official policy in DC. I'm sure they'll change it soon, but that Taiwan is part of China. The recent success of China in facilitating a reconciliation agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia illustrates Beijing's growing role in West Asia and the world, and signals a shift in the post-World War II global balance of power. Did you catch that? China facilitating peace, a reconciliation agreement, meaning a détente between Iran and Saudi Arabia, two massive, strong countries, wow, peace, that sounds like a good thing. And also that peace is having an impact on the many of the battles and wars and conflicts throughout the region in other countries that are not China, that are not Iran and Saudi Arabia. So it's not just peace in those two countries, it's peace spreading through that region. And this report, this threat analysis by the US government says this is really threatening. This is really awful. We are seeing peace in certain regions of the world. Wow, let's be upset. That's how belligerent and militaristic the US is. We have a war economy. Much of our money is based on war, and we need endless war and we need endless strife because we don't want these countries to have their own sovereignty, to stand up and be independent. And so we say things like the fact that China has helped create peace in certain areas is a horrible, threatening thing to us. U.S. academic and foreign policy columnist, which means he must be a fucking shill for empire, Stephen Walt describes the détente between Riyadh and Tehran as a wake-up call for the U.S. foreign policy establishment. It's a wake-up call. How dare another country create peace where we want endless war? He notes how China is attempting to present itself as a force for peace in the world. No, not present itself. It has been, if you look at that détente between Iran and Saudi Arabia, if you look at pushing for peace in the proxy war between Russia and the U.S., if you look at so many of these things, China has been a force for peace. I'm sorry. I'm not saying everything about China is great, but fucking has been a force for peace compared to the U.S. Quick reminder, folks, how many military bases does the U.S. have outside of U.S. borders? 900. How many military bases does China have outside of Chinese borders? 1. Just a quick reminder. He notes how China is attempting to present itself for, I already said that part, force for peace in the world, a mantle that the U.S. has largely abandoned in recent years. Yeah, the U.S. has abandoned our peace-creating role around the world. Because you know all those times the U.S. created peace around the world? We did a great job of that, didn't we? Anyway. All right, so that's all I have on the waning of the U.S. empire power, the petrodollar power. I will leave the discussion, although I'm sure I'll have many segments coming up soon on the impact that the waning petrodollar is having internally in the U.S. But a good discussion for you guys to have in the comment thread is how quickly is this going to impact domestic life in the U.S. and how much is it going to impact domestic life in the U.S. I think everyone should buy Pop-Tarts. Just hoard Pop-Tarts and you'll be fine. Thank you, Thomas, for the donation. Thomas says, is it mass shooting and Trump derangement season again? I still have my Ukraine decorations up. Where can I get a deal on Taiwan flags and pins? Yeah, seriously. I still have my Ukraine flags up. I can't keep up with which flag to drape outside on my porch. Is it Black Lives Matter now, or is it and by the way, I think that we have insane systemic racism in the US. I just think that the BLM logo that is plastered across every corporate sign is not really changing much. Have you noticed that? That as Starbucks, writes BLM on every cup they hand you or whatever, it hasn't really done a lot, I don't think, except maybe Race Wash, the Starbucks name. Okay, but I want to get on to this TikTok ban bill that doesn't have the words TikTok in it and just takes away all of our rights. Which also has to do with China, of course. More xenophobia, more attacking of anything connected to China. Which, what? I'm trying to remember where the CEO of TikTok is from. He's not actually Chinese. Anyway, it was hilarious because the Congress kept asking him about being a Chinese citizen, and he's like, "I'm not actually Chinese." Anyway, so let's get into this bill. Oh yeah, Singapore, right? He's Singaporean, and they kept saying like, "You're Chinese," and he's like, "I'm actually from Singapore." But all right, I'm going to get into that bill and how it takes away our rights. In a few minutes, we'll be going to only rumble.com/Lee Camp. So join me over at rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's like us. Like I have a producer sitting right over there. You know, he's working hard. Join me at rumble.com/Lee Camp. But I will at least start this next story on all of the platforms. And it's completely free to watch over there, by the way. And if you're already watching over there, then nothing changes. Everything continues as is. But all right, the White House is backing a bipartisan bill. Dude, every time the Democrats and Republicans unite on something, hold on to your goddamn pants. Hold whatever you got stuck in your craw, just hold on to it because it's going to be ugly. Anytime you see Democrats and Republicans uniting to just slam something through, you are losing all your rights. You're either losing all your rights or you're about to see a sovereign nation get bombed. Those are the two. You're about to see Nazis get funded in a war if both sides unite. And those are the things they do quickly, right? They've been fighting over, actually giving everybody health care. I don't mean the bullshit Obamacare. I mean actual health care or actually giving people a raise to the minimum wage. They've been fighting over that for 15, 20 years. The $15 minimum wage will be worth 35 cents by the time they actually get it passed. Because $15 minimum wage made sense when they started saying fight for 15. And now it's like, so you can't live on that. But okay, so hold on to everything stuck in your craw. The White House endorsed the Restrict Act, which actually for once is an appropriate name because they're restricting American freedoms, calling it a systematic framework for addressing technology-based threats to the security and safety of Americans. All right, I'll read you. This is the NBC version of what this is, and then I'll read you the truth of what it is. The bill, the Restricting the Emergence of Security Threats That Risk Information and Communications Technology Act, or Restrict, reading the words that make up the fucking dumb acronym, never worth it. Never, because they mean nothing. The only reason they pick those words is because they spell out restrict. Would give the Secretary of Commerce broad power to regulate tech produced by 6 countries that have adversarial relationships with the U.S. China, Cuba. By the way, what has Cuba done to the U.S. ever? Since they threw off their capitalist chains. What is anybody be like, Cuba shot me in the foot? Cuba. Like, what has Cuba ever done to the United States? And we just still hate them. We're still furious, other than their cricket acoustic cannons that gave us light headaches. You remember that? That really, man, I'll never forgive them for that. Legit, the diplomats who accused Cuba of doing anything said they got light headaches, and one of them said they couldn't sleep for a week. like that's what they did? That's the big game? Okay. Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and Venezuela. And Venezuela also, Venezuela also hasn't done anything to the U.S., except it did offer to give people free oil back after Hurricane Katrina. So it did that to us, free oil. But here's something else. Well, I'll get into this in a minute. That although it makes you comfortable with this bill by being like, oh, it's just 6 countries, and I hate all of those countries. Those are all evil devil countries. That's what you call when someone's super evil, evil devil. Those are all evil devil countries. So yeah, I'm fine with anything that restricts them. They can add a country to that list with no consent from Congress, nothing, no alert. They just go, oh yeah, we're adding Mexico. AMLO said we're an oligarchy, add Mexico to the list. So they can add a country to this list and then cut off anything that country has created or people from that country have created. It's the worst xenophobic fucking nationalistic U.S. empire bullshit. The White House endorsed the Restrict Act on Tuesday, calling it, quote, a systematic framework for addressing technology-based threats to the security and safety of Americans. Does anybody hear that coming out of the White House and Congress and believe it? Like, whenever you hear the fucking White House and Congress go, we're going to keep Americans safe, do you go, I bet that's what it does. I mean, and if there's, for the Americans out there that think that hear the White House go, we're going to do this to keep Americans safe. And they go, that must be what it is. They're keeping Americans safe. Like, stop eating so many paint chips. Stop. You're supposed to take the plastic off the microwave dishes before you eat them. Like, who believes that? Anyway, while the bill doesn't cite TikTok by name, and that should be a red alert. Not only is it stupid to ban TikTok, yes, we could talk, you could do 15 minutes or an hour or whatever on how dumb it is to ban TikTok, but this is not about banning TikTok. It doesn't even say TikTok in the fucking bill. While the bill doesn't cite TikTok by name, the senators who introduced it repeatedly touched on fears that TikTok, a social video app owned by the Chinese company ByteDance, that's wildly popular in the U.S. and around the globe, gives Beijing a steady stream of information about its users. Okay, for one thing, I think the stream of information that comes from TikTok about you is generally that you like watching people get hit in the balls or something. I don't know. Like, how much info? I don't want to understate how much info they can fucking steal on you. I'm talking about any tech giant can steal on you, but it is kind of funny to think like, oh, I watched 20 minutes of, cats licking puppy dogs on the eyeballs. And I think that, I hope that info wasn't stolen. But anyway, I get they can steal far more info than that. But so here's just the surface level analysis of this, which we'll get into the deeper what this does in a second. But the surface level analysis is that this is really about China has banned a lot of U.S. tech companies. Like I mentioned, I was just over there for the first time ever. I was only there for 4 days, so it's not like I saw the whole country. And I hadn't realized, or I hadn't thought about it in a long time, that everything that I normally have to use to communicate, Google, Gmail, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, they're all banned in China. And so you have to get a VPN in order to get around it. Now, the argument from the Chinese government is that we don't want these U.S. companies data mining our citizens. Same argument coming out of Congress on why TikTok should be banned. And you can sit here and debate whether that's true or not, whether it's just that China wants to data mine their own citizens, whether it's that the U.S. is upset that TikTok is data mining our citizens rather than U.S. tech giants, data mining our citizens, which is what they're doing. Google knows fucking everything about you. So does Facebook. They know everything about your behavior, where you move, how you go. Google Maps is monitoring you on your phone. They are data mining the shit out of you, and they want to be the only ones doing it. And most of these companies, the ones I just mentioned, Facebook, Google, YouTube, which is owned by Google, all have connections either now or even in their early days to CIA and FBI and other U.S. state entities. The Atlantic Council decides what's allowable, is one of the main people that decides what's allowable on Facebook. The Atlantic Council is essentially a NATO and State Department group. Facebook and Google both had early investors from NQTEL. NQTEL is the CIA's venture capital fund, or arm, venture capital arm. So they were in bed with the CIA pretty early on. So was Musk, by the way. Musk was very close with the CIA early on. And so the entities he's involved with, PayPal, he helped create, was connected to, in bed with NQTEL in the early days. So so in that way, there is a reasonable justification for other countries to say, we don't really want these CIA entities to be data mining our citizens. Now, almost all countries, with the exception of China and North Korea and a few others, have not said that they would stop these things. Anyway, so the surface level discussion of banning TikTok could be, we don't like that you banned our companies from data mining your citizens, so we're going to stop your companies from being in the United States. That's the surface discussion. But as I said, this bill doesn't even mention TikTok. And where is it? What? Oh, there it is. Sorry, having trouble finding it. Okay. This is put up by Greg Price, and he highlights portions of the bill. He says the bill to ban TikTok is absolutely terrifying. It gives the government the ability to go after anyone they deem as a national security risk, at which point they can access everything from their computer to video games to their ring light. This is a Patriot Act for the internet. This is allowing the U.S. government to basically go into everything you have online if they internally declare you a security threat. You wouldn't even know they've done it. In this section here, which keep in mind, this bill never says the words TikTok. It says, in general, the secretary, in consultation with the relevant executive department and agency heads, is authorized to and shall take action to identify, deter, disrupt, prevent, prohibit, investigate. Boy, that's a lot of words that say fuck with, huh? Why not just write fuck with? You'd save so many letters, so much ink. Or otherwise mitigate, including by negotiating, entering into, or imposing and enforcing any mitigation measure. So that sounds like anything from arresting you to charging to giving you a massive fine that crushes your life to putting your fingers in one of those Chinese finger traps and gluing them in there. Any risk arising from any covered transaction by any person or with respect to any property. Man, they basically want to look into and imprison or otherwise interrupt the life of everything everywhere all at once. Of all of the things, any person or with respect to any property subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. that the secretary determines. Or in the case of Julian Assange, don't even need to be in the don't even need to be in the jurisdiction of the United States. You could be a fucking Australian working in Britain, and we'll still arrest you and say you should be extradited. All right. So does any of that I just read sound like, yeah, that sounds like it's designed to get rid of TikTok? Or does it sound like it's designed to fucking invade the privacy of every American that they even minorly think is a risk or a threat, such as, I don't know, the most censored comedian in America? Me? Little old me? Such as, anybody who has a popular YouTube show. Oh, by the way, thanks for helping me hit over 40,000 followers on Rumble, which I've only been on Rumble for less than a year. So thank you guys for doing that. But I assume that means I will be the main target of this bill. No, not the main target. I'll be farther down on the list. There'll be other main targets. Desktop applications, mobile applications, gaming applications, payment applications, web-based applications. Here's the thing. Couldn't you just say web-based applications? And doesn't that include all of this? Information and communication technology products and services integral to artificial intelligence and machine learning, software, hardware, or any other product. This is everything in our lives. Or service integral to telecommunications products and services, including wireless local area networks, mobile networks, satellite payloads, satellite operations, control, cable access points, wireless access points, core networking systems, long, short, and backhaul networks, edge computer platforms. This is fucking insanity. This is basically everything in the world that's online or on your phone or whatever. They want to be able to stop, to track and stop anytime they want. And he goes, believe it or not, it gets even worse. If they find you in violation, They can put you in jail for 20 years, fine you $1 million, and seize your property. They can also deem any foreign government an adversary without informing Congress, and everything they do is not subjected to FOIA. So you can't even find out whether they have put you on this list, whether you're being tracked or targeted until they maybe arrest you and put you in jail or something. Also, the irony of that this bill basically does everything to Americans that the propaganda says China is doing to their citizens. So they tell us China is doing all this shit to their citizens. I'm sure plenty of it is true. I don't know how much of it is true, but some of it, obviously. And yet they're like, the propaganda is, China's doing all this to their citizens. And they're like, we want to do that to our citizens. This is taking away any remaining freedoms that Americans had under the guise of stopping TikTok. I mean, they said the fascism will come to, I don't know what the original quote said, but the version I've heard, fascism will come to America wrapped in a, flag holding a cross or whatever. It's very true, but here's even dumber. Fascism is coming to America wrapped in, we're going to get TikTok. That's the saddest statement. I mean, at the very least, could you pretend that this is something bigger than just getting TikTok? I'll repeat it. I feel like it bears repeating one more time. This bill never says the words TikTok. This has all of that congressional hearing, all of that shit had nothing to do with TikTok. It was designed to force through this shit to take away any remaining privacy and rights that you have on this planet. And this is what's being forced through right now with bipartisanship. Like, I mean, where are the dissenters in Congress? It's probably like Rand Paul or something. There's a million reasons to hate Rand Paul, but he's almost always the only one who's like, I think this is hurting our freedoms. I realize he doesn't have that accent, but in my head he does. All right, so I want to get anyway. I don't know if fighting against bipartisan bullshit in Congress ever achieves anything, but I'd say fight against this bill. Fight against this, because if there's any hope of stopping it, we should stop it. All right, I want to get to whether the Trump indictment matters at all and what it means. That'll be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. I also have... maybe I'll have to save one of those for the next show, so I won't promote it. But I also have an update on Stephen Donziger I need to give you. The Supreme Court just weighed in. So that's all at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Join me over there. Even if you aren't coming to Rumble, I hope you will become a member at leecamp.net. It's the only way I support this show. I need you guys to want this show to continue, to want my live streams and everything else to continue. So please join up at leecamp.net. The cheapest level is like $6 a month, really not much. And you get the free Q&A. It's normally every Friday, but this time it'll be tomorrow, Sunday night. Free Q&A with me every Friday. You'll get my new book, Dangerous Ideas, for free. That comes out hopefully within the month. And so much other exclusive content. That's at leecamp.net. All right, but I'm going to rumble.com/Lee Camp. If you give me 1 second, I'll look up the link so you can be lazy. And look, I respect laziness. I'm a fan of laziness. All right. Here's the link in the comment thread. Join me at rumble.com/Lee Camp. And remember, hit subscribe over there, hit follow and everything so that I can continue to increase those numbers. Okay. But for those of you who refuse, who say, absolutely not, will I go to a free platform